Hello Indie Game fans, it's an interesting week of releases, including some pixel art titles, a grimdark boss rush game, and of course, roguelites galore. So let's begin with Spectre Divide, a competitive 3v3 first-person multiplayer shooter which has the gimmick of allowing you to control two characters in real time, where you can spawn a Spectre which you can immediately jump to, adding another layer of tactical consideration. While technically independent, this is from X, Respawn, Epic, Riot, Bungie, and Blizzard developers, so the AAA pedigree is there, and most notably, they have partnered with esports man Shroud as their lead gameplay advisor, so it will be interesting to see if this takes any market share away from Valorant or CSGO. I've had my eye on this game since it is just the cutest thing, in which Kato Buttered Cat is a puzzle platformer that exploits how cats always land on their feet and how buttered toast always falls butter side down. So what happens when you strap the two together? The puzzles in this look clever and atypical of a puzzle platformer, with it also having boss fights, mini games and hidden rooms, in addition to 140 main levels and 60 side levels, looking to be for fans of the genre. This video is brought to you by Commander Quest, a roguelite deck builder meshed together with Auto Battler real-time strategy, combining aspects from some of my favorite games into an exciting new experience. Choose a hero to lead your army, drafting cards and considering their cost when choosing which to play on the battlefield, where the units will immediately spawn and move towards the enemy to engage in combat. However, unlike other auto battlers, it is not just one round, since the action pauses and you can play your next hand, adding several layers of strategy to consider. Of course, there is a node-based map to explore, filled with combat, random events and shops, where you can buy, sell and upgrade cards. There is meta progression, in which experience gained from a run unlocks new cards, relics and commander skills, also having pretty great hand-drawn art for the cards, and the possibility of massive scale RTS battles. So if this looks intriguing, wishlist the game on Steam via the link in the description below. A grimdark title of interest is Perennial Order, the self-styled 2D plant horror boss rush game with an amazing art style, but the challenge here is that this game has one-hit death, so you need to be as adept as avoiding enemy attacks as you are at finding that tiny window to attack and then retreat. You might have noticed that I didn't use the term one-hit kill, since it will take more than that to take down the bosses, but that does not apply to you, so you have to be careful. The art style and animations are a highlight, although they may have gone too far in the dark direction, so hopefully you will be able to see what is going on. There are NPCs to meet, and supposedly some intriguing lore and backstory about the world, having a Hollow Knight-like charm system to help you along, and even has co-op support for up to 2 players, looking like quite the intriguing prospect for the week. For some reason, there have been a whole bunch of medieval fantasy tavern management games as of late, the latest of which is Ale and Tale Tavern. But wait, don't go running off just yet. Rather than simply being focused on the tavern aspect, there is a world outside of the tavern where you can go out to explore, fight monsters, hunt animals, go fishing, go on quests, and more. All this, however, is in service of the tavern, as you gather ingredients to prepare food and drink for your customers, but makes it more fleshed out as compared to some other entries in this space. The almost World of Warcraft looking characters and UI elements also gives it an odd sense of comfort, and most interestingly, this is not an early access release, so you'll be able to enjoy the full experience from day one. Love indie games? Sign up to my newsletter to get a weekly dose of what's hot, along with some news and of course, weekly game giveaways, so if interested, link is in the description below. A moody exploration adventure game that looks like it has an intriguing world is Self-Loss, being set in a Slavic mythology-inspired world as our protagonist goes on a journey to cure his wounded soul. It has some Zelda-style action-adventure elements since while you are playing as a healer, you do have a magic staff that can be used in combat, but also to affect the creatures and people that he comes across. It does give off a vibe similar to something like Far Lone Sails, but maybe less linear in structure, since you're able to explore on foot or by boat. From the trailer, you will see whale gods, the Baba Yaga's hut, a giant crab boss and more, looking absolutely gorgeous and is of interest. Okay, this next title is not an indie game, hence the asterisk on Bakaru, but I wanted to give this a mention since it's a 3D action-adventure platformer that has been likened to Goemon, which are games that people absolutely love, and since games in this genre are quite the rarity these days, you might want to check this out. It draws upon Japanese mythology and culture as our hero has to travel to 47 prefectures to battle against the villain to stop them from taking over Japan, being able to transform into various forms inspired by Japanese heroes for gameplay variety, looking pretty well made overall. Here's a bit of a weird one in Boyhood's End, a pixel art sci-fi horror adventure game with quite the intriguing setup, not being something that I usually cover on this channel, but it comes to us from WSS Playground, a publisher and developer that have titles like Touhou Lunar Night, Dranius, and Needy Streamer Overload in their portfolio, so of course I have to give this a look. Set in a world where a mechanical overlord rates every human being alive, assigning them everything from their jobs to romantic interests and daily meals, the lowest scoring human partners up with an eccentric genius hopping on board a driverless train on the Galactic Railroad, meeting great leaders from the past to prank them as they make their way to the farthest edge of the universe, a place known as the Crimson Southern Cross, in order to confront the end of their own childhood. Yes, it's a lot to take in, I know, but it's kind of why it got on my radar, so it's a cool, weird thing that might be worth a look. Another curiosity of the week is Fantasy Map Simulator, a game that allows you to not only create awesome world maps, but also to simulate them, watching nations battle over territory and to see how empires rise and fall through the ages. I don't know how much quote-unquote gameplay there is in this game, but the appeal of watching nations abstractly battling it out for control should appeal to a very specific subset of people, and it even has a desktop wallpaper mode so you can leave it running in the background and just check in on it occasionally. The developer of Garbanzo Quest did reach out, so I wanted to give the 1.0 release of this 2D platformer a mention, since it looks kind of neat and might be going under the radar. First released in early access in September 2022, it releases out of it about 2 years later, where our hero has to use their spit to take on enemies and bosses. It draws inspiration from Super Mario World and games like Undertale and Celeste, looking like a quirky, weird title with a sense of humor. I chanced upon Ghoul Scrapers when looking for new releases, in which this is a precision platformer title with a throwback 8-bit pixel art look and colour scheme, where the platforming challenges appear to be quite devious, with a bunch of spikes that will kill you and barely any safe spots to land on. Luckily, you do have access to a gun, which, upon firing downwards, gives you just enough propulsion to act as somewhat of a double jump, with there being checkpoints within the level as well. However, even if the challenge might intimidate you, this game should be a completely free release, so you don't have to cough up any money upfront, so there's no harm in giving it a go, and is the hidden gem of the week. This next title has quite the history, so I would recommend going to their Wikipedia page to read more about the original Gimmick, an 8-bit platformer made for the Famicom or original Nintendo Entertainment System, which was competing with the then newly released Super Famicom and 16-bit games, to disastrous results of course, which saw it having a limited release in Scandinavian countries of all places and not coming to the West until 2023. and now, somehow, 32 years later, has an official sequel named Gimmick 2. Our hero is a little green yokai or supernatural spirit entity with the ability to launch a powerful star used in platforming, puzzles, and even to attack enemies, where mastering the physics will be key and looks pretty nice for a modern platformer. One look at Mirage Feathers and you will probably be able to tell if this game is for you or not, since it is a very anime on-rails shoot 'em up that sees you playing as a cybernetic air superiority fighter destroying waves of enemy aircraft. There is a lock-on system where enemies that come into your crosshair will be automatically fired upon, with, of course, progressively more powerful weapon options at your disposal as you play the game, also allowing you to engage overdrive for maximum firepower. There's a sort of frantic, manic energy from this game, especially in how fast the action is and how you are wildly swinging the camera around to target enemies, where again, on-rails shooters like this are relatively rare, so perhaps give it a try. This next title comes to us from Malaysian developer Cellar Vault Games, in which Paper Ghost Stories Third Eye Open is similar to their previous title, Paper Ghost Stories 7pm, both of which have supernatural elements, but it isn't quite a horror game in the traditional sense. The game tells a coming-of-age story about a young girl who can see and speak to ghosts, uncovering the mysteries behind these spirits as she comes to terms with her supernatural ability. It draws upon traditional Malaysian Chinese folklore and superstitions, which is not commonly explored in games, which is why this is of interest, and while not exactly my kind of game, I wanted to give it a mention since it's a subject matter that is close to my own culture. After a little bit of a delay, the first-person survival horror title Numata makes it to release, a game that has drawn comparisons to Resident Evil in terms of gameplay and vibe. You are exploring crime scenes to figure out what happened and to solve the crimes, with some bloody and gory set pieces that are kind of disturbing. However, the developer says that this is one of the scariest psychological horror games in years, but also says that it's a true survival horror game and somehow mentions cosmic horror as well. And while I'm no expert, I'm pretty sure that those refer to games and themes which are quite different, so let's see where this lands when it releases. An interesting looking first-person puzzle game is Together in Between, a game that is set within the confines of a magical book where you and a partner have been trapped in the same place but in different dimensions, having to work together in order to escape. Yes, if you didn't catch it, this is co-op only, so you need someone else to play this with, which might immediately eliminate this game for many of you since I understand the hassle of having to set up something like this. But if you do manage to find someone else to play this with, this might be special. Interestingly, the developer does not encourage you to open up Discord or some form of voice chat with your partner, but rather communication is through the game itself and the actions that you take, with a cool visual style as well, so let's see if this will be as good as the We Were Here games. This one's for indie game developers. The free indie game marketing resources are ready, so sign up via the link in the description below to get it in your mailbox. I have a soft spot for Match 3 type games, especially when there are RPG elements in it, like in Puzzle Quest, as compared to the high score chase of Bejeweled, which is why Demon's Mirror is of interest, and if you can believe it, they have added Slay the Spire style deck building and turn-based combat to the core Match 3 action. The cards that you draw can be used to manipulate the grid, eliminating symbols or to get them to swap places, which then sets up longer chains and combos to devastating effect. Cards are limited by the NG system in every turn, and of course, there will be a variety of status effects that you need to use to your advantage, with enemy intentions being shown so that you know who to target. As such, it's a twist on the formula that I'm definitely down for, and I'm very curious to see how the cards interact with the grid and relics in terms of strategy. Here's a fascinating turn-based tactics roguelite with deck building elements named Necro King, where you play as the undead monarch himself and set your skeletons loose on human settlements to remove all life from them. There's deck building in this, as you choose from over 30 types of units and can unlock new skills and skill upgrades with real-time tactical combat taking place on 4 distinct sections of the battlefield with an awesome pixel art style as well. Now here's the title which has promised in Sumerian 6, a real-time stealth tactics title about a group of commando scientists going behind enemy lines to fight the Nazis, with a healthy dose of arcane magic and weird science to keep things interesting. The last game to use this theme in the Lamplighters League didn't do so well for its developer, but to be fair, that was a full-on turn-based tactics title, where this instead follows in the footsteps of games like Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun. And hey, given that developer Mimimi Games has closed down, someone has to take up the mantle for the genre, so here we are. It looks nice visually and should have an interesting lineup of characters with special abilities, so if this does well for them, you might just be seeing more of this type of game out of this developer. I previewed Star Trucker when looking at the upcoming games of the month, in which this is a first-person simulator title in the vein of games like Euro Truck Simulator and American Truck Simulator, only this time on intergalactic highways instead of roads on Earth. The core concept is similar, since you are hauling cargo from one port to the next, getting rewarded for successfully completing a trip so that you can afford fuel, repairs, and upgrades. You will become intimately familiar with the cabin of your truck, fiddling with switches, knobs, and levers as you make your way through space, looking pretty chill and relaxing as games in this genre should be, with the new setting being the most interesting part, and I cannot wait to see what new ideas they have in this game. As is often the case, 1.0 releases out of early access tend not to get picked up by the list of new releases, which is why I'm glad that I caught Shogun Showdown, one of the best turn-based roguelites with deck building elements, which is kind of like side-scrolling Into the Breach, since enemy intentions are shown and positions matter, where you can make enemies hit each other and is so satisfying, and is potentially one of the best games of 2024. Watch this video for more strategy roguelite titles.